We've done this a few times.
What up, everybody? It is Tommy Runs, and this is Aaron
Aaron
Worldwide.
Worldwide. Wow, you messed the intro up that quick.
This is a PR project. It's a Sunday. We did a long run. We have fun. I mess up intros every time, pretty much. So we're just gonna roll with this, just like we normally do. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the PR project off season, and in the off season, we do all type of new stuff. We try. We do strength training. We do fast stuff. We do 5Ks, 10Ks with hills on both at the front, at the beginning, and the end. I did that last weekend. That was fun.
That was a you thing. I don't know why you said we.
Well, we did it. It was last year. You were there, and you remember the pain and suffering of a hot, humid run with two hills and a 10K.
Yeah, and I learned not to do
So that's what. Oh,
it.
that's why you left me. Like you're like, oh man, I got something to do. So really, you learned your lesson, and I didn't.
You know what they call that in the athletics world? Well, they
No.
call this in everywhere. I made a business decision. I
Okay.
made a business decision that maybe a 10K on one of the hottest days of the year is probably not what I call a good time. So
So I just wanted to go with starting the 4th of July out with a bang. All right. Sorry, this is ridiculous.
that was a good one. That was a good one. I'll give it to you.
Y-
But I still had to deadpan it because
Why
it's funny.
couldn't you for the soundbite? You had to deadpan it. Okay. Anyway, so thank you guys so much for joining us today. We have a special person on the show. We have Nell Rojas that's going to be joining us, talking about strength training and the positives and how to do it right and the way that she looks at it, her philosophy and all that good stuff. Um, I've talked about Aaron in the past before that in a good way that you do a really good job with strength training, and you've always, not always actually, in the last couple training blocks you've thrown strength training in to be much more consistent, and I feel like that has played a huge role into your progression in running in general. So I think this is a really cool opportunity to highlight the reason why we need to strength train more often and how to do it the right way, because there's, I've talked to athletes that don't do any strength training, and then you talk to some people that maybe do it differently than others and are much more of an advocate of it. And I really feel like Nell is, and she's had some crazy success. I've actually heard a podcast where where she was asked to introduce herself, and she's like, yeah, I'm a runner. A couple years ago, I came on the scene and I just started kicking ass and taking names or something like that, which was really true though. She really did come on the scene like gangbusters. And
I listened to that
just,
same podcast this morning.
oh, did you? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. How did she say it? She said, I think she might have said shit, but it was
She
fun.
said
Whatever it was.
I came in the game and started killing shit for sure. And
Yeah,
I'm like,
killing
okay,
shit, crushing
I
shit.
like
Yeah,
these vibes. I
yeah,
can do
exactly.
this.
Exactly. And then yeah, that's the vibe that we're looking for today. So Coach Nell, hopefully she comes with a few vibes like that. But it is really cool though, because she came onto the scene almost seemingly out of nowhere, like the overnight success that takes 10 years, that type of thing. But she came onto the scene crushing it. Took first place in 2021 fall Boston, for first place American woman, and then came back this year and did the same thing again with a time of 2:25 something. But yeah, just ridiculous, So, and I really do feel like the strength training played a huge role in that, and I can't wait to talk about it. So please, if you're here watching the show, make sure you ask questions. This is our first time having a professional athlete on our show. This is the first time. I've done a live show with her before, but ask questions, because strength training is what we all probably need to do more of, and Nell knows how to do it. So
And before we bring her on,
before we bring her on,
is this our first woman on the show?
yeah, which is dope. Which
We
is
love
dope.
that.
I think we picked the best one to do it too. So, okay, then we got Alexis. So, Nell's in the background, but so Alexis, just everybody knows, Alexis is the third member of the show. She's I love Nell, excited for the show today, and we got to meet her, Alexis, in Boston. So
We're burying the lead, man. Bring Nell on. Let's without
okay,
further
all right,
ado,
all right,
let's
all
just
right.
go.
Here we go. There, unburying the lead. There we go. Hey, Nell,
Hey,
Hey, what's up?
how are you?
Love, thanks, guys. I love that intro.
Yeah, it's like that's what I don't do intros very well. I kind of fumble through them, but sometimes Aaron is able to help guide me through these moments of struggle.
He can kind of like pick you up and
Yeah.
kind of like make sure you're on the right path.
Yeah, exactly. That this is why the show is not just with only me, because it would be terrible. Anyway, so thank you. Thank
You
you
got
so
the
much.
show. It's not that
I have a show. Thank you so much for being on the show, Nell. How you feeling? What's going on right now?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I actually just recovered from COVID last week, and before that was just like a huge mess after Boston, just like with who knows what. So I like finally, like last week was the first week where I can like actually run again and like do real workouts. So I'm happy about that.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you're feeling better for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, COVID sucks.
Ugh,
I had COVID back in November, but it fortunately it didn't hit. Well, it might have been December. It didn't hit me that bad. It was the Omicron, so I was kind of down for a few days and good. But
yeah, I know it's actually like hard because like I had a lot of like my competitors reach out and be like, "Oh, no, it's okay. Like I just like totally ran through it," and I was like, "Oh, like awesome!"
Right.
Like, and so I tried to run through it, and like I was like out there just like feeling awful, and like I was like, I gotta get this whatever many miles in, and then like in hindsight, I'm like, like that was a terrible idea. Like I had no business running through how I felt. So,
yeah, those competitors, I think they might have been trying to get you out of the game.
They were getting them. They were like,
They're like, yeah, just run all the miles. Go ahead, just do everything. You'll get better. Trust me.
Yeah.
No, I haven't gotten COVID yet. Like I want to have it, but I just haven't. Which is, I heard if you don't have COVID by this point, you just don't have friends. So
exactly. You sit in that room all day, you're not gonna get COVID,
Right. But so we would love for you to put your coach hat on for us, because one of the things that has stood out in all the interviews and all your training and your performances in the last couple of years is that you are a huge proponent of strength training. You actually have a YouTube channel as well, so everybody go check that out. But that you do focus a lot on strength training, and it seems to be a little different than what, like, if you looked up running exercise on YouTube right now, it different types of workouts would come out. So I'd love to kind of start in the beginning of that part of your journey. When did strength training become like a thing for you, and how did that get introduced?
So yeah, growing up, my dad was a professional runner, but I was very into ball sports, so I was into soccer and basketball. And I think he just like liked like being a part of my my sports and my training. So my dad would take me to the garage, and we'd do just like your classic. I mean, this was like in the 90s, so he'd like have me doing like bench press and like rows and just like whatever. I don't even remember. He really liked, for some reason, he was really into like tricep dips, like or tricep, like these guys.
These guys,
so that way. So we always did those. And so that's kind of like where it started. And then, we did like your typical kind of strength from the football coach in college. They were like, oh, here's a dumbed down version of what the football team does. So we did that. And then post college, I just like, my dad, for some reason, was really into it. And he was like, I want you to start Olympic lifting. So he sent me to a guy to like learn ollie lifts. And that kind of turned into like me getting more interested in strength training and getting more interested in kettlebell training and more dynamic lifts. And that's kind of like, I just like enjoyed being in the gym. And it was working, so I just like kind of rolled with it.
Yeah, I think a big part of strength training for us runners and just people in general, a lot of times is some people are so intimidated by the gym. Mm-hmm. It seems like you never really had that experience since you started so early. Would you agree with that you probably never had that moment of like tentativeness, like, I don't know what I'm doing here?
No, I guess I didn't. And yeah, I guess it's probably, I grew up like spending a lot of time in gyms. and just being comfortable with the equipment and the movements. And it came, I was like a very athletic child and like teenager. So it came like movements came very naturally to me. So yeah, I guess I didn't understand that intimidation as much as most.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, go ahead, Aaron. Sorry.
No, I was going. I'm taking it off on a tangent already because she said she
Go
played
ahead,
sports growing up. I'm a
Aaron
basketball head
Aaron
before I'm
thinks
a runner.
hold on. Aaron thinks that he can shoot the basketball with some proficiency. He thinks. Apparently there may possibly be a video out there lurking in the internet that he made like 3 shots in a row now. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Like 3 in a row.
That's no Steph Curry.
like unguarded, like from.
No, I'm sorry. Hold on.
Crazy. I didn't know I was gonna get put on trial this quick. This is crazy.
Hold on. No, Aaron is a good shooter of the basketball. I'll give him that. So you
Okay.
Thank you for my credit. But I was just gonna ask, like, so how long did you play basketball? Like, what was it? Was this like through high school and all of that?
Yeah, I walked on. I basically made varsity all 4 years of my high school career. So I actually got worse every year though. Like I came on my freshman year and I was just like, I was like really good. Because I've been this tall since I was in kindergarten. So I was like a post. I was like down by the basket and I was like super confident. I had really good like ball handling. And then like what happened was I went to, I think after my freshman summer, after my freshman year, I went to North Carolina to play in some tournaments. And I mean, these girls were just like so much bigger than me and so much better than me that I just like got rocked. And then after that, I just was like so scared and like just got worse and worse as I went. So
you're like, this is not for me anymore.
I was like, I can't even compete with these. Yeah, it's so scary. But so that's what happened.
Yeah, that's interesting. Tommy, I'm gonna let you talk. But me and Tommy were actually talking about how kids are specializing so young now, and how a lot of kids don't get to enjoy those other sports and doing other activities because as soon as you show promise in one sport, it's like you have to play 1 million AAU games a summer. You have to play every game for your high school, and they never get a chance to kind of get a rest from their main sport. So those other ball sports, I'm sure you take a lot of the lessons and the movements and everything that you learned from those, and they apply in your running career so far, for sure, right?
I mean, yeah, I think one of the most important things was that like I was really underperforming. I was undertraining and underperforming in high school. So that like when I got to college, I was like an underdog and I just got better every single year. And I was just like made like a big improvement my freshman year and then just got better because like I wasn't maxed out, and I had the mental and physical energy to just continue to grow.
And yeah, so you really asked kind of the question I was going to ask. So like we've talked to, that there's plenty of young ladies out there and guys that look up to you for many different reasons and relate to your story. But so if someone's watching this and they're in high school and they feel like, what I need to do is focus on this one thing, what would be like your advice to a younger runner watching this that may have other interests but still wants to be really good at running?
Yeah, it's so hard because now like it's different now than it used to be. Like now there's like clubs, and there's traveling and there's like so much and there's more pressure. So but like yeah, I would say like if you are a 3-sport athlete or a 2-sport athlete, like definitely like try to like not have that FOMO and like know that like you're getting other benefits that the people who are just running are not getting in like a lot of different ways, mentally and physically. And I think if you like the most important thing that people like parents and kids just don't look at is like the long term. Like we're not even looking at like state, at the end of the fall, or if we're talking about track spring, we're not even looking at your senior year state. We're not even looking at college. Like, we're looking now at like when you're primed for running, which is for women, you can be 30 to 45. And if you have that in mind, I think like that's that, and you have like I was lucky. I had really good coaches that like held me back and had like my best interests at heart.
Yeah, that's super important. And me and Tommy, we talk about it all the time. Being runners that got into the hobby or into the sport later in our lives, we don't really. It's hard to kind of sometimes understand or like connect with people that's been running their whole lives and they're at this point of their running journey where they're just like, I'm kind of over it. Or like when they leave college, they take that break and they're just like, yeah, I didn't want to run anymore. I didn't feel like doing it anymore. And me and Tommy just like, no, we want to get better. We want to get better.
Yeah.
So I think looking at the long game is unbelievably important, because you don't put as much pressure on yourself to like crush every race you run, or every workout doesn't have that super like feeling of like, if I don't nail this, I'm missing out, and things like that. But also that ties into why we're here today. We're here to talk about strength training, and we're here to talk about things outside of running that builds us. So I feel like ever since I started building in gym days into my routine, it's given me the ability to be a little more resilient. So I would say, what's the best first step for a runner to start incorporating some sort of strength training into their routine?
I think there's a lot of ways to go about it. I mean, now there's so much information out there. And it's probably almost too much information, and it's too overwhelming, and they don't really understand. Like, a lot of runners, like, I just don't know what's best for me. And so, I mean, I was always really lucky to like work with people that I like, that were like super knowledgeable. And so I kind of was able to like really learn from them, and like study for myself. So I would say, the most important thing is that like all of your joints are like the most jointy they can be, and like the strongest and most resilient they can be. So that obviously starts with like mobility. So I do think there are a lot of resources out there. I actually don't know, like, I can't be like, oh, here's one that like I would start with. So that's a really good question that I should have a better answer for. Like, where do you start?
Like, so when you have, like, as I know you coach as well, so like when you are coaching some of your running athletes, where do you tell them to start, I guess? Like, I mean, what type of basics are we talking about? Like, or do you give them full routines, or it's like, hey, focus on these body parts or these jointies,
Yeah.
How do you, yeah.
I have for my athletes, for my runners, I have a set of like mobility that I want them to do before they go out on every run. And basically, like, I go down my body, and I'm like, here's like 3 to 5 exercises for this. Like, say like your spine. Here's 3 to 5 exercises for your like thoracic spine, for your hips, for your ankles, for your knees. Figure out like which one, when you do it, like which one feels best for you, and which one like sticks, and you're like, this is like, I love this one, I get a lot out of it. And so we start with that. But then I also have, for my athletes, I have a strength training program that, depending on like where they come from, like zero background, a little bit of background, no, a lot of background, I have written strength training programs for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for me, at least, when I first started running, a lot of my tentativeness about strength training came from the fact that I would feel so sore like after a strength training session. So I think I was trying to go a little too hard, a little too early.
Yeah.
And it was just like,
yeah,
this is too much. So I think like keeping it light and just keeping it body weight and not trying to do too much is important. But as far as like dealing with the soreness and trying to nail workouts, like running workouts, how do you normally like schedule someone's week to maximize the benefit of a strength training day inside of a running routine?
I it depends on the athlete, because like most of the athletes I coach are like busy people, right? And so they're like, they might not have 90 minutes to get their, run workout in, and then another hour for strength. So I say, like, look, here's your optimal thing. Optimally, you're going to do your strength workout in like the afternoon after you do your quality run workout. That way you keep your hard days hard, and then the next day is like an easy day. And then like, hopefully, like if you do get sore from it, like I always do my quality workouts. There's 2 easy days in between every quality workout. So hopefully you have those 2 days and you're not quite as sore and you're not quite as fatigued. And so you can go into the quality session a little bit more fresh.
Yeah, because like that's definitely the thing, is like and that's why I think like the off season is so important as well. And can we take it back to like out before we get into training blocks? Because I mean, a lot of people are kind of worried about like a Chicago or Detroit Free Press and stuff that's in the like late fall, October,
Right.
November.
Right.
So right around now is when they're starting to think like, okay, in a couple of weeks, training block's going to start. Like, what can someone do now though to kind of prepare themselves to be able to continue strength training? Because that's my problem. I'll just be honest here. Is like, okay, I started strength training. I mean, I started running. I'm in the training block, and oh yeah, Aaron's doing workouts, 3 times a week. I better start too. And then I do what he just said, and then I'm like, I'm sore on a run, and then I feel like crap, and then he drops me. All these other things just roll out of, just get way out of whack, right?
Yeah.
So what can we do? What can people do now with a few weeks left and focus on to kind of put themselves in a better position to make this a full habit?
Yeah. I mean, I think Aaron's right. Like, I think like starting very easy. Like, I know when I start, like when I say I take a break and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get started again, not in my marathon build, but in running. I'm like, okay, let's do some rotation stuff. Let's do some spine movement. And let's do some very light weights. There's days where I don't even pick up weights, and like I posted something the other day, like in all honesty, I would say 80% of what I do in the gym, I wouldn't consider it strength. I wouldn't consider it like, oh, I'm building strength. I would consider it training. I would say like, okay, I'm doing this because like this is going to increase my range of motion so that my hip can move smoothly through the full range, and I'm stronger throughout the full, like where I need to be strong. So I'd say like to people, I say back it way off. It doesn't mean you go in the gym and you like right off, I'm lifting heavy weights. Like go in the gym and do like very light movements.
Yeah.
So don't go in there and load up that big back squat on the first day, because it's probably gonna not be keep you in there long.
I know, it's more fun to do that. Like I miss my like big heavy back squat days, because those are very far in between and few in between now. But like a lot of stuff I do now is like pretty tedious, and I'd say even like finding a band strength routine to start really like will like smoothly get you into strength training.
Yeah, and like so basically what you're saying is if you need a chalk or a powder bag, right away, that's not what you need. You don't need any powder for this for your in the beginning of the train of the.
No, if you're like putting that belt on, like
too much,
probably red flag. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, because I think runners are like, we're all kind of like that. We, it's like all or nothing, and we got to do it. We got to do everything in our power to make it the best as possible. And then I think we just put ourselves. We're trying to prevent injury and make sure that we're strong and faster and better and all that. But I think that we end up hurting ourselves because we're not able to get quality runs in because we're too sore, or we don't do the workouts at all, and the runs suffer. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you have to think of like, you're not gonna like start a training block with like the hardest, longest run. You know, like that's gonna do no good for anyone. Like you said, like you're just gonna plateau and you're not gonna be able to run for 5 days or something, and that defeats the purpose. So just starting like, think of it as running, and start like with a 4-mile jog, you know.
Yeah.
And so, just because I'm not as well versed as in the strength training world, I know you talked about mobility. Is really it sounds like it's the pillar of your strength training. So it's not just straight up lifting weights just for the sake of lifting weights. But could you, just to kind of paint a picture for people that don't really know like what you mean by lifting weights, but more for mobility's sake, can you kind of describe what that means and maybe just a random exercise name that we can look up so that we kind of know more about it?
Yeah. So like one of the staples is something called CARs, which are called controlled articular rotations. And basically what it is you're moving every joint, like you can do it for any joint, through the full range of motion. And so what you're doing is like you're opening up, like, so runners, they're really stiff. And this question actually came up the other day. Like, I'm sure you guys have heard this, and maybe, I've had this same thought. Like, we all hear like, well, as a runner, like we want to be stiff, like we want to be able to like hit the ground, and like ankle sniff this is like a good thing. But what we don't understand is that like, you want to be stiff because you can control your muscle and you're strong in that joint and in that muscle, tendons and ligaments. You don't want like to be stiff because you're just like haven't opened up that
ankle doesn't move.
Yeah. Right. Like you don't want your joints not to move well. And then once you do like get those controlled articular rotations, what you need to do is you need to be able to be strong throughout that whole movement, because injury will occur if you can get in that movement, but you're not strong in that movement. And if you strengthen throughout the whole range of motion, it will strengthen the whole movement itself. And so one thing I do for strengthening in the whole range of motion, for example, my internal rotation is pretty bad. And it's because I have a labral tear that is affecting it. And so you need really smooth internal rotation to finish your stride and to get as much power from your stride as possible, because that's how our bodies work. And so I do a lot of strength in my deepest range of internal rotation. And those are called pails and rails. So you can kind of look those up, but basically it's like isometric contractions in end ranges of motion.
And so, no, I like it. But so just to kind of piggyback off what you said, you notice that you are weaker in your internal rotation right now because of limited in your range of motion because of an injury. How would somebody go about maybe figuring out where their limitations are in range of motion, and how would you explain the best way to figure out like what needs to be worked on and what you can do well?
I mean, seeing a PT is like the best thing you can do, and even if it's like one time, or there's like a free consultation where like you can just be like, okay, is my spine moving okay? Is my ankle moving okay? Is my knee and hip, are those moving okay? And like bringing those through different, ranges of motion to see like, hey, like this isn't actually working. Like no wonder you're overcompensating on something else. But yeah, I actually don't know if there's like resources out there because it's so complicated.
Yeah, I like that question though too, because it's like until you go to a PT, and then they put you through like those tests and all the stuff that that they have you do to check all your ranges of motion. I feel like until you do that, you don't realize that you're supposed to be able to do certain things. Like because
Mm-hmm.
then it's like embarrassed. Like somebody says, "Oh, do this," and I'm like, I'm just gonna tell you right now, I can't. So,
Yeah.
so just don't write that down. But you don't. I think that reference to go to a PT and go through, I guess, that initial whatever it's called, like that
Station, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
initiation thing where they can really tell you like, oh, here's where your issues are. I mean, because we'll make things up. I think I thought that I didn't know that my ankle was, honestly, because you mentioned the ankle part, like I didn't know that my ankle and my big toe flexion was terrible.
Oh,
You know?
yeah.
I just didn't know. Like, I mean, why would I know that?
Yeah.
Like because
You don't
and
know.
then and then as soon that's like one of the first things they do, and they tell you it's like, oh, you're this and that, and I'm like, well, I just been sitting at a desk working half my life, so whatever. I don't know. I don't need that ankle.
I don't need you to judge me right now.
Can you just help me run again, sir?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I like that question there, like, 'cause that's big though, because how do we know what to work on?
Yeah, and I think the recommendation for the PT is great as well,
Yeah.
because we do, like, you're right. We only get one body, so it's not like you've been here before and you're like, oh, my knee worked a little different last time. It's like, no, this is how your knee worked your whole life. So
Some
you
of us,
don't realize.
some of us are able to just jump from body to body. Like there's just like, hey, this last body I had was just much better than
Going back.
Yeah.
But the other way to go about it, like my strength coach isn't a PT, and he doesn't claim to be a PT, and he doesn't really, he's like, yeah, I don't have that doctorate that PTs have, but what he is really good at is just like, for me, he's like, I honestly don't care what's wrong. But if we work on making your ankle like healthy, and we work on making your knee and hip really healthy, then it shouldn't matter, because we're like almost covering all bases.
Yeah. And I think like the North Star, well, not even the North Star, but something that I usually recommend. I'm no PT by any stretch of the imagination, but I know a lot of us have sit down jobs. A lot of us are in a seated position so much during our day-to-day lives. And I just tell people, like, just figure out some workouts that's going to target your glutes and activate your glutes and get you using your glutes, because that's such an important part of the running process is your glutes firing properly. A lot of bad things can happen if your glutes aren't firing properly. So I think that's kind of a good starting point, is like figure out some movements, whether it's just like hip lifts or like marches and things like that, to get those glutes working and to feel what it feels like to have those glutes activated, and then go from there. So I think that's a pretty decent way of kind of introducing someone into strength or like mobility type training, because you can kind of start there and then find more things from there.
Yeah. I honestly, like, when it comes to like mobility and movement, I think starting just like with whatever you can is great.
That wasn't a question, my bad. I'm trying to get there.
She's like, I'm just trying to get off here. I'm trying to show y'all I know what I'm talking about. No, I'm just saying, no,
I'm ego streaming right now.
Right now, like at the moment, we're live ego streaming with Aaron worldwide. I never heard ego streaming. No, but like honestly though, like that's a good point though. And I was gonna say, like, what are your, I guess, top three? I know you talk. It's kind of two-sided. So at one point, I've heard you say that you work more on tissues than necessarily muscle, like working on the tissues rather than muscle groups per se. But then also, to start that off, what muscle groups do you think are the most important when it comes to running? And then could you kind of lean into like what you meant by the tissues as opposed to muscle groups, if that makes any sense?
Yeah. So basically, my boyfriend's about to walk in, so my dog's gonna bark, just to warn everyone. So basically, obviously our body is like all connected, right? And if you have a kink somewhere, it's going to eventually make it all the way down the line or up the line, whatever. So, you know, a couple, I would say top 3 things that are really important to work on is like spinal mobility. So making sure, like thoracic mobility, that you're not stuck and you're not fighting yourself, because that's something that's going to affect literally everything in running. So I do a lot of thoracic mobility, and I do a lot of, there's this sling that comes like here, and what it does is it's like similar to like the Achilles, where when you're running, it will stretch, store energy, and then it's almost free energy to come back. All right. There's also some research where like we think running is very linear, but actually it's like this rotation, this movement, this rotation. And so spinal mobility, rotation of the hip. There's so much rotation going on in the hip when you're running. Internal rotation, external rotation. So that is of the utmost importance. And then like half the people you talk to have lower leg problems, right? So, you know, like strength and mobility in the ankle, in the lower legs, very important. So if I were to like just like throw out 3, those are probably the 3 that I would tell you to try to research more on or try to focus on. And then, so tissues, right? So like we call all of our muscles like, this is my quad muscle, but really all these muscles are just like kind of tapering off, you know, they go to tendons, ligaments, but then they attach, they like turn into something else. So I don't even like to think of them as like different things. You know, I'm just like, okay, when I run, I am eccentrically loading the front of my leg / like up to the psoas, right? So like, and then I go to an isometric contraction, and then it's concentrically loaded. So basically, if you like take your body through those movements in different ways, in different like, sometimes it's going to be lengthened and we're going to work on it. Sometimes it's going to be shortened and we're going to work on it. That's kind of like how I look at tissues, instead of like, let's work on my quad, you know, because guess what? It's my quad down here, but then it's something else up here, and it's all connected.
Yeah, it's like what's the song they used to sing to us? Your hip bone is connected.
Bone connected.
Your neck bone.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, sing it, please.
I don't have the lyrics on hand, but I think
Right.
you know what I'm talking about.
Right.
But no, that's good. That's good insight, because a lot of times we do get caught up in like, oh, my knee hurts, I need to do a bunch of exercises that's going to make my knee feel better. When really that could be that knee issue could be stemming from another issue that you have further up your kinetic chain, and we just neglect it because it's like, oh no, but it's my knee. So I absolutely 100% agree with the idea that everything is connected, and if you strengthen holistically, then that'll give you a better chance. Because I was telling Tommy the other day, it's like there's no such thing as injury prevention, but there is injury mitigation. You can do things to reduce the risk. You can't do anything to 100% get rid of the possibility, but we want to increase our chances. So
absolutely.
So becoming a full athlete and working your entire body, a lot of times we as runners, we get caught up and we think we're just like legs, and we're just like, no, as long as my legs are fine, I'm good. But it's like, no, if your whole body is strong, then you have a better shot to perform at your best. So but I do want to ask, so we know you do this little running thing on the side, we know you're a coach, but like you have this whole like career and things. So like at what points, because I like to talk about racing because racing is fun or whatever, so like at what points during your race do you feel that you can kind of call back on some of the work that you've done in the gym to kind of like push you through? Is that a thing for you?
Yeah. So one thing that's really important, I'd say, in being strong is that if like, say like my, I guess like maximal contraction is like pretty high, right? Like I can lift pretty heavy weights. So I need to work less hard because I only have to, I have to use less of a percentage of my max strength.
Yeah.
That kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's easier for me to use whatever, I don't know how to say this, whatever like strength we're using when we're running, which is like not maximal contraction, right? It's way less than that. It's easier for me to do that. So I feel like I can, go for longer because I'm not working as hard. I'm being more efficient. And then another thing that comes into that would be coordination. So a lot of times when runners are like, they get like leg cramps late in a marathon, what their body is doing is their body is not able to coordinate anymore in that muscle contraction. So I don't get cramps in my legs because like my body doesn't have the problem with coordination because I teach it to be coordinated. So I think those two things are pretty important. I also think like I do feel like my every one of my strides is like pretty powerful, and I'm like covering a lot of ground in each stride because of strength training.
And do you feel like there's this weird little course, it's called Boston Marathon or whatever. Do you feel like, I mean, because the Boston, in that same interview we talked about earlier, I mean, you talked about like there's marathon training and then there's like Boston training, right?
Yeah.
But to go on to the strength side of things, strength training, do you feel like Boston is like not your course, but you do well there because of the strength training and like you're saying, like this max load force and all that stuff? Do you feel like their strength training helps you there more specifically than just say like a flat road?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I think the first year I went into Boston, I think the reason that course does well for me is because it is a lot of downhill, and I think I and everyone else is really good at downhill because you just kind of like, and I'm like I'm like a stronger runner, so honestly, I'm probably better at downhill because of gravity, right? So I think I roll downhill very well. Mm-hmm. And I think like, yeah, I do have a lot of quad strength, so I am able to handle it. And then I think when you get to the hills, like, yeah, I am very powerful up the hills. I actually wasn't this last Boston, but that's a whole different story. So yeah, I think because of those two things, I do excel at Boston.
Yeah.
And so I know that you, after Boston, you shared on your Instagram that you did have to take some downtime and you just kind of stepped away for a little bit to kind of revamp and being somebody that I've been through a few bouts of, I don't know if it was overtraining, but maybe under recovering. But what would you say is some of your see how I'm
like
just,
that.
you know,
I like that. I like
Yeah.
I'm not overtrained. I'm just under recovered. You
gotta reframe it in a positive way.
I like that so much.
But yeah. So how important is that in the grand scheme of things to take that time off and to really like assess your body and figure out where you are after your blocks?
Yeah, I think everyone is a little different in this, just because we all like have different personality types, right? And I think a lot of it has to do, like, we're so connected mentally and physically that I think a lot of it has to do with that. And for me, like, I, really value just like having real fun, not just like only type 2 fun, right? So for me, and like my body was like so wrecked after Boston, so there's like no way I could have, like, if I decided to like start training like pretty hard a week after Boston or even 2 weeks after Boston, like I think I would have plateaued very quickly, and it might have not shown up until I hit my fall marathon block, and I was like, and I'd be like, I'm freaking exhausted, you know, because as a coach, I see that all the time where people are so amped to get back, and I get it. I'm like, yeah, like we're all motivated. We want more. We want to do better.
Yeah.
But you have to like, I tell my athletes, like, I don't want you to take a step until you are like so uncomfortable and you're just like itching to run. Like that is when you take your first running step.
Yeah, so you heard it here first. Hanging out with the gang, you know what I'm saying? That's a part of training. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Hanging out with your friends and enjoying life is a part of training. So you heard it.
So describe to me though type 1 fun versus type 2 fun. Can you
Type
slip that
1
in
fun
there?
is
Type 2
like,
real quick.
yeah. Type 1 fun is like, you know, going out and partying, you know, like you're like letting loose, dancing, drinking.
Yeah.
And type 2 fun is like nailing a workout.
Oh man, that's a drastic difference. I thought like type 2 fun was gonna be like hanging out with the friends until like 8 o'clock and go home.
No.
That's like 1.5.
Yeah. No, type 2 is training.
Yes, I mean I like that a lot because I mean not only you know you the body needs rest after a big training block and a big marathon, but just on a mental health level, I mean we just need to unwind. We're not meant to have we have seasons. Everything it needs to have a season, you know, and I think we ask so much of ourselves, you know, on top of work and friends and relationships and then running and back-to-back marathon training blocks. It can be a lot, you know, and it sounds like fun. I mean, because Aaron and I are definitely all for type 2 fun, but too much type 2 fun for too long, your body may actually be getting stronger and faster. But like you need your mind to be in it when it's time to go into that marathon training block. So I really appreciate you being open about taking time off too. You know what I mean? Because I don't think people are talk about that as much as maybe they should.
Yeah. The other thing I think is really important going along with that is like, we're so wrapped up in ourselves as runners and like it can become our identity, right? And if we don't take time to like have a different identity and purpose and really respect ourselves and love ourselves for not only our performances and our training, but like connecting with people and, just like not being a runner, I think that itself will make your running go so much better because you don't put all that pressure on it. You're like, no, like I went to Mexico with my friends and like they loved me because like we like laughed together, and we had so much fun. So I think that's another reason to like take a step back.
Yeah. And I tell people all the time, I don't like labels. I don't like when people say, oh, he's a runner. It's like, no, I'm a human. And running is one of the things that I do because you're right. A lot of times we do get so wrapped up in like making running. Like if we have a bad race, people are going to think this about me or I'm not fast enough. Or we tie so much of our worth and we tie so much of our value into the things we do rather than who we are. Exactly. And I think that's a very tricky, slippery slope to go on because it's cool when you're doing well. When you qualify for Boston or when you crush that goal, it's like, oh yeah, I'm the person that I want to be. But then when things don't go as well, you start to get down on yourself, and it can definitely take a toll on you mentally. And if you're not in the right, like Tommy said, if you're not in the right space mentally, then it's hard to get your body to follow behind you and do the things that you wanted to do. So I think if anything from this entire show, that should have been like that. I want that to be the thing that people take home is like even some of the fastest people in the world still have lives outside.
Runner, yeah.
Like some of the best runners, some of the best athletes, they still do regular people things because we have to do that. That's as humans, as we want to be connected, we want to have friends, we want to have meaningful relationships, all of that good stuff, and we also want to accomplish our goals. And it's what do they always say? Oh, how do you find the balance? It's about finding a balance, or at least trying to find a balance.
Yeah. Like I would say, catch me, in my 12-week marathon cycle, like, am I balanced? Like, no, my boyfriend will tell you, like, you are not fun. Like, it is not a fun time. So, So yeah, I think that's kind of the way I find my balance is, you know, making sure I take that time.
And I think
double down on type 1 fun when you have the chance.
Exactly.
And
Yep.
I think too, like, you know, like that kind of rolls into like the marathon blues thing, you know, like, because I know
Yeah.
a lot of people will, you know, run that goal race or whatever, and then like afterwards they just don't know, like they feel down, and I mean that's a real thing. People get depressed after achieving or trying to achieve a big thing, and I think that I know like your 12-week block is you're not fun and it's, you know, you're all in, but I mean I think we have to realize that you are a professional runner, you know, so it's like I can be like that too, but then I have to realize like this isn't, I'm not, most people watching the show aren't paying the bills, you know, the way you. So we need to try to find a way to get like that type 1.5 fun in, because it, you know, you may not drink during your training block because it, you know, all the issue, you know, the things that go along with that, but it's like we need to try to find more balance, because if you're taking time after a marathon when it would behoove you maybe to jump back into another one because you can go race somewhere else. If you're taking time off, then we need to find out ways to take little segments of like fun time during our training block, so at the end of it we still have a family, we still have friends.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But I just had a quick question, because I know we kind of jumped off the strength training thing for a second, but I had a question, because I know, you know, Aaron, you talked about like the kinetic, you know, it got a knee issue, but it really could be, you know, somewhere up the kinetic chain. But can you talk to me a little bit about balance too? Because I know sometimes an injury, we will think it's like our right knee is the issue. My right knee is terrible, but then it really could be something on your left side or whatever. You know, a lot of times it's like an imbalance or whatever. How has, and I think that's also part of like maybe the coordination side of it too. Like, how do you view that, and like how would you suggest someone go about working on like body balance, I guess?
So I think, I don't know, I was talking to my strength coach not long ago, maybe last week, about imbalances. And basically, you know, I think 99% of people have imbalances, and like I think he said, like, even though like most people are, even left-handed people are right body dominant, because of, you know, what organs and whatnot. So imbalances are to be expected, and I think they are okay as long as you like mitigate them as much as you can. You know, like, do single leg strength, do single leg mobility, so you don't compensate quite as much. And I think that's really all we can do. And, you know, if we find an imbalance, you don't necessarily need to just like hammer that. But I would make sure, as long as you're like doing your hip mobility and your thoracic mobility and your knee and ankle mobility, like, it should come along more.
Yeah, I think that, because I love like the single leg focus, or single, because a lot of times we'll do squats and things like that, and we're thinking that, I mean, we are obviously building, but it's like if there's an imbalance when you started doing squats, it's gonna still be there at the end, because I mean it possibly could still be there. So single leg stuff is
probably be worse.
Yeah, it could be worse. Yeah, because you'll be compensating, just like when we run, we compensate, and normally the leg that's dominant probably has more issues because you're loading on that leg more. So I mean, it's science, guys.
Single leg, single leg stuff is. I mean, I would say I'm mostly doing either split stance stuff or single leg stuff in the gym.
Yeah.
And so the last question on my list, actually, I don't know if you heard earlier, but you are our first female guest on the PR project. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. And I don't know if you can see the comment section, but I think we have a good majority of the comments right now are all from women. So
nice.
What would you say is some of the differences in the gym from what you would prescribe or what you would recommend for a male runner or as to a female runner? What are some of the differences to pay attention to?
That's a great question. To be completely honest, I would evaluate the person as a person, instead of a female or male. So, I mean, I do strength training with guys, and we're all doing the same thing. So yeah, I wouldn't change anything.
No, and I think that's a good question, and I think the answer is perfect though, because I think that we all naturally maybe not are suggested that we do something different, but like guys go, oh, I'm not gonna do this thing because that's guys don't do that, or and vice versa, women may say like, oh, I'm not gonna go do that because that's like a guy thing or whatever. But the point is, it's like there is get out there, fix do all the things that you need to do to make you feel like a strong person, runner, mom, dad, whatever, right? But so I think that's perfect though, just to say like, hey, just get in there and focus on what you need to focus on, and
yeah, like everyone has ankles, knees, hips.
Yeah,
and they say the best coaches respond to every question with "it depends." So I think we're on a good track.
Yeah,
because everything is so specific to the person. Like it's very hard to give blanket like advice to like this is what you should do, because everybody is so different, and we all do have so much different imbalances or strengths and weaknesses, and even mentally, like some of us, we can just like, I'm sure Nell has like she said, she has a higher maximum. She made it sound really cool. I can't think of it. But I'm sure that also is mentally as well. Just to be able to run the way you run, mentally you have probably a higher threshold for discomfort than most people. So to say it depends is actually like right spot on with what we need to hear, because you don't want somebody to just say, no, you need to do 150 squats every day and that'll make you a better runner. This is like, okay, I don't think you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think like going along with the female versus male thing, obviously one of the biggest differences is that females, go through menstrual cycles, and that like I read Roar, which is about female menstrual cycles and like how to train with your menstrual cycle. And, that includes strength training. But even that, like, I personally am not like any other girl out there, like you see girls and like, we all have different amounts of hormones and react differently to them, even as women. So like, I think it's a mistake, because it's actually a good thing that people are talking about, menstrual cycles now and like how to work with them. But I also think I'm being like, just like grouped in with every single woman and we're all the same. And I'm like, no, because guess what? Like that girl has way more testosterone than I do. And, like I am less womanly than a lot of other women, meaning like maybe like my estrogen or progesterone levels are different. So I think that's also a wrong way to go about it.
Yeah. I feel like it's covering or trying to cover some ground that was just skipped over for so long. I mean, because I've talked to a female athlete or pro says like, there's especially in high school. I mean, at a younger age, it matters more. Like, cause like, I think in high school, their coaches are pushing, young girls to do and run through certain things that they probably shouldn't. And I think that needs to be addressed to make sure that, that they grow into healthy women and go through all the cycles in life that they need to. Right. But I do think that like, I kind of hear what you're saying. It's like, just because now people are more educated on it doesn't mean that like now we're all the same and we're going to pay so much attention to it, but now we're going to regroup you in a different spot.
Yeah, I'm just regrouped into like the menstrual cycle thing where I'm like,
put me back where I was.
So we're getting there in that, but I think that is also an individual thing, even with women.
Yeah.
So as we bring this to a close, Nell, I think I'm gonna ask you the generic ending question. What's next for you?
I have I'm doing Beach to Beacon, which is a Joni Benoit's race in Portland, Maine. It's a 10K, and that's August 7th.
Beach to Beacon.
I'm
Yeah.
running 5K that day too, so that I'm gonna channel my inner Nell Rojas
Yeah.
Man.
and try to smash it.
Good.
Well, and if you haven't noticed, no, I like shoes.
Yeah.
I got a question for
Yeah.
you.
So are those all new? Like, do you run in those shoes, or tell me about those shoes?
This is actually one of those virtual backgrounds. This isn't really where I. That would be hilarious though.
Yeah, because it's like it's pretty good, but it's definitely not like
it could be better. Yeah, these are all shoes that I run in.
Wow.
I don't really run
Top level shoes.
I don't really run in those.
Yeah.
Because I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of them.
What are they?
Those are the alphas. So, do you?
I'm a fan.
You are a fan. You are a fan. So, are you? I kind of wondered. Have you ran in the Alpha 2 yet?
No. Can you get me a pair?
If I could get you a pair, I'd have a pair. And if I can get you a pair, I'll get us a pair.
Okay.
and then I'll promise to like those. But are you gonna? Would you run in the 10K in alphas, or are you gonna go for a more minimal type shoe?
I would absolutely run a 10K in alphas. I am testing some other shoes, some other companies to see how I like them right now.
Yeah,
I kind of started that process. So hopefully I'll like those shoes.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, we won't ask you, unless you just want to share. But yeah, so much. Thank you so much though for being on the show. Because I think the information that you come with is so much. It's different than what most people are talking about. We're talking about splits and easy running and workouts and all this other stuff. But there's this layer that we really need to work on, which is strength training and mobility. And I really do. It was actually a surprising spin for me because in my mind, I thought like I pictured you in the gym, like, back squats and Olympic stuff all the time, but I loved that when I said like 3 muscle groups, I mean, thoracic mobility, hip mobility, and ankle and knee, and I think that is so huge because that's something that we can do. One thing I'd love for you to kind of end us off with is we kind of touched on it a little bit in the beginning, like a tip for people I'm not terrified. I'm reluctant of like strength training because in my mind, I feel like I need to be in the gym for 2 hours.
Okay.
What's some tips that you can leave us with, or maybe even a mindset or a thought process about this strength training thing that can make it more digestible for someone who has running, job, blah, 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 and needs to fit this in?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would honestly say, like, to make it very easy to be like, it will help. I would say calf, single leg squat, deadlift, some type of, this kind of strength. So what did I say? 4 things. I would say start very easy on all of them and then just make small progressions like every week. Be in the weight room twice a week. And so like I named 4 exercises, squat, deadlift. I named 4. So that means you could do 2 once a week and 2 the other day a week. And then you just either progress weight or you progress reps or you change the speed, and you don't worry if it's perfect because nothing's perfect. All it is about buying into it and being like, I'm going to be consistent. And that's all.
Dope.
Love it.
20 minutes, 2 days a week.
Yeah, because
that's very doable.
It's so intimidating, like, I mean, it just, and I mean, I think
I know we need to. I know
I think that that's
but
why that's why certain apps like do make such a killing, like like a Nike app or whatever, where like it's like a bunch of 5-minute workouts that just that maybe don't even hit these things that we're talking about.
I think we might have lost her.
Oh no,
There,
there she is. Did you hear anything I said?
no.
Okay. Well, I think that that's great because I think that there's like so many apps out there that kind of like they do a good job at like making it more digestible, but maybe they're not covering some of the things that that maybe we need because it's too short. But I think that that's perfect, and I will. You know what? Because of you, 20 minutes today. I'm gonna start. I'm
wow.
starting my journey. I'm starting my journey today.
That's amazing.
It's one thing about Tommy. Tommy
that's-
doesn't waste time. He gets right to it.
Yeah, like so like any idea if it pops up, somebody suggests something, I'm like, yeah. And then like a day later it's like, oh he actually did it. Okay.
Yeah.
But thanks so much now for being on the show. I feel like I'd be bad if I didn't click this in here really quick. He's not talking not that great interview. Yes, thank you so much. They're not talking to me though. Whoever this is it's probably for you. Is this one of your pupils?
Ramin, yes.
Yeah.
Hey.
I figured he was talking to me, but I'm not coaching. I'm not currently coaching anyone. So thank you so much, Nell, for being on the show. Everyone, this is the PR Project.
Wait, Nell, let them know where they can find you. All of your resources, all of the good stuff. Where can they find you online?
Either rojasrunning.com or Nell Rojas Running on Instagram.
Perfect. And you can find me on Instagram if you want to follow me for the stupid stuff I post at Aaron X Worldwide, WORLDWIDE. And Tommy, we can find you
TOMMIE_RUNZ. Follow me there.
Spelling or handles?
Well, I mean, you don't have to. I'm pretty sure they can find you. We have to be very specific because we're not Nell Rojas. So, but thank you so much for being on the show, taking time and doing all you do and being a leader in this community. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. That was fun. Appreciate it.
Peace out, everybody.